And we are live. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to a very special edition of Off the Record on the People's Podcast this evening. We have a magnificent guest with us tonight, one who is going to give us some amazing information as well as inspiration, and that is none other than our sister, Sister Jennifer Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, ma'am.
Wa alaikum salam. Great to see you, my dear brother.
Great to see you as well. The first question first of all, shout out to you, your family, and on behalf of myself, my family, and the viewing audience of the People's Podcast, we just want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come have a conversation with us. And as we were speaking earlier, I was just saying I've known your children. Well, you know me and my siblings since before we were, born of little children.
Yep.
But to see your children grow on Facebook, it's just amazing. It's a good time, and may Allah continue to bless you, but bless the children as well. And we send nothing but positive energy to them, and we love them as we love you all. All right. The first question that we have for you, ma'am, is when did you first hear the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And just as an introduction, Brother Josh, thank you for the opportunity to come before your illustrious People podcast. And I've been always in a viewership on the back end. So for me to be now on the hot seat is an honor indeed, my brother. So thank you for the invitation and the privilege to join the podcast. So in answer to your question, you said, when did I join Islam?
First hear the teachings, like when you first hear.
All right, it's an amazing story. When I went away for college in 1992, in 1992 was the first year that I heard the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I attended State University of New York in upstate New York, SUNY Oswego. And it was that place where the campus was still abuzz with the minister as he was there about a year or so prior. And the campus was just still lit with Farrakhan. And believe it or not, as a person that grew up in Brooklyn, New York, literally off of Flatbush Ave, I had never really been exposed to the teachings, never heard of the minister, never heard of the Nation of Islam. So when I came to the university, it was the first time I ever heard of Minister Farrakhan, heard of the Nation of Islam. Although I was super, super active, even in high school, I would lead walkouts. I was part of the Black Student Union. I was everything Black. I was leading marches for Abner Louima, across Brooklyn Bridge with students in high schools. And I was super, super active and really, and I guess the cause of Black people has always been a cause that spoke to me, that I was passionate about. Being the first generation of Haitian immigrants.
Okay, I know you're Haitian. Okay.
Yes, first generation of Haitian immigrants. That sense of identity, that sense of Blackness, that sense of history was something that was ingrained and fed to us with like baby food. I learned as long as I can remember about 1804 and our independence in 1804. I learned from as long as I can remember about Toussaint Louverture and Boukman and Henri Christophe and all the great revolutionaries. I learned about them as a young child barely walking. So when you think about Black love and Black nationalism and loving your people, that's something that was always in me. So when I went into the university and I heard a buzz about this great teaching and met so many great people that exposed me to the teaching, the first lecture I heard was I Accept the Challenge. And that was the first lecture, which is interesting because the lecture that was titled I Accept the Challenge. And boy, was it a challenge because I grew up Catholic. So for me to accept Islam would be going contrary to everything that I knew and grew up with as a person, as a teenager, as a child. All I knew was being Catholic, being Christian. So accepting this challenge of a new teaching, accepting this challenge of a new way, accepting this new challenge of believing in a reality of God who appeared in the person of Master Farad Muhammad and his messenger, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and his Messiah, the Most Honorable, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Man, that was earth shattering. That was truly an earthquake for me, and I'm sure, and I have no doubt, it was an earthquake for my family as well. to even see me choose another way of life in the form of Islam. So I accepted Islam. In my heart, however, I didn't commit. So I would go, there was Brother Minister Mark out of Syracuse, New York. I would visit the mosque in Syracuse, New York. And I would visit the mosque and listen to the teachings. And every time everybody says, Jennifer, you ready to accept? No, sir. And I'll come again. Says, Jennifer, are you ready to accept? No, sir. And I'll come again. Because I am the type of person that if I tell you yes, it's yes forever. It's yes forever. Like, you got me forever. And I didn't want to give a promise that I didn't know long term if I was able to commit myself in fulfilling. So in turn, I was invited to the Georgia Dome in Atlanta, Georgia, where the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan spoke to 55,000 people. And I think it was equated to the same amount of people that were watching the World Series, or maybe even more than that at that time. And we took a road trip to Georgia from upstate New York. And on our way down, we stopped in Washington, D.C. And we stayed in the home of Daddy Benjamin and Sister Clara, who lived in Washington, D.C. And their home was such which was an interesting geography, I guess, because part of their home was in Maryland, part of it was in D.C., District of Columbia, and part of it was in Maryland. And she was such an amazing pioneer that when we arrived, and I wasn't Muslim, but I at that time, I was truly a supporter and I loved the teaching, but I didn't know if the teaching was for me. I didn't know if it was for me. So when she came in, we stayed at her home for like a day. Those who drove in this entourage on our way to Georgia to hear the minister for the first time. And she taught about the teachings, and she was one of the homes that the messenger stayed. And she was the home that she was one of the homes that the messenger stayed in. And also she was the one when the messenger was on the run, he sought sanctuary in her home. And she gave some great stories. She mentioned how when they came looking for the messenger and say, hey, is Elijah Muhammad there? And she would say, he's out of town. Reminder, I told you part of her house was in Maryland, part of it was in DC. So he was truly out of town. So she said, I wasn't lying. So I would tell them that he is out of town. And she gave such a rich history. And what was so impressive for me was when there were sisters that would come to visit her in her home. And I saw these sisters in beautiful garments and gold foil garments and tams and fezzes and headpieces. And they looked absolutely amazing. Absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. And I had never seen that level of beauty in Islam until that moment in Washington, D.C. It absolutely took my breath away. And I said, wow. So sister fed me, she fed me, she fed me, she fed me. And this is about to make me emotional, because just thinking about this journey and thinking about Allah's favor, you know?
Yes,
because there's no such thing as coincidence, right? There's no such thing as coincidence. And I believe that sometimes Allah creates things and puts things in motion for a purpose, for you to hear a word, for you to respond to the word, for you to stand up to the word, and for you to accept the word. And I think he did just that for me in that, because after that, we continued to drive to Atlanta, Georgia, and I saw the minister for the first time. And I saw a man that was so articulate, because I was an English major in college. So it cracked me up when the minister says he was an English major in college, because I was an English major in college. And I loved words, still do. I love words. I love the power of vocabulary.
Mm.
I love the ability that you can find a word, and that a word that you find can encompass 1,001 sentences.
Yes, ma'am.
Word. So, and that's the power of language. And I could see why the Savior spoke to us about language, right? So when I heard him speak in Georgia, Josh, I mean, he was articulate, he was brilliant, he gave such a clear and concise argument.
Mm.
I couldn't even argue it as being as analytical as I was as a college student. And it was amazing. And I wasn't sitting in the best seat, Brother Josh. I think I was all the way in the back, like in the bleachers. I think he was like this small based upon where I was seated. Mind you, it was like 55,000 people there. And but even with that being true, he rocked my soul. He created an explosion in my mind, you know, to make me curious to the teachings, for me to delve into this God who they call Master Farad Muhammad.
Yes, ma'am.
That was it for me, you know. I think many people come in for many different reasons. You know, many people drive this. If you ask people, especially those who converted to Islam, if you were to ask them, okay, what made you accept Islam? You'll find 1,001 reasons what makes people accept Islam. For some, it may be Black nationalism. For others, it may be the community, the ummah. Others, it may be spirituality. I mean, it could go on and on. It may be, okay, I just love the minister and all those things. It may be many, many reasons. And they're amazing reasons. They're good reasons. For me, what attracted me to Islam was the spiritual. It was a spiritual. As nationalistic as I was coming in, which I was, and still am, but it's the spiritual that attracted me because it completely contradicted everything that I knew of the existence of God and his place in the world. And it was just something that just blew my mind. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Praise to Allah. And people are showing you love all around the world. Thank you, everyone who was watching. It continues to send positive energy and love to Sister Jennifer Muhammad. Sister Miriam says, Assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam. Your son, Nasir, says, beautiful as always. My sister Naima says, ASA family, alaikum salam, Naima. Minister Jamil says, Assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam. Thank you, everyone who was showing love to you. My next question for you, ma'am, is how did your family feel once you accepted the teaching and friends?
My friends were resistant in the beginning, you know, because it was different. All my people were Christian. So for me to come up as a Muslim, what is this? What is this? And then on top of that, my family, oh, that was a battle for years. Because it was an ideology that was contrary to the foundation of our family. So it is not happenstance. The fact that the first lecture that I heard of the minister was, I accept the challenge, because it was a hell of a challenge. It was a hell of a challenge. It was a challenge of constantly being challenged with, why are you a Muslim? Why are you choosing this? Okay, it's great, but it's great for the others. Okay, Jennifer, you don't smoke, you don't drink. Jennifer, you weren't running the streets. Jennifer, okay, it's great. It's a great teaching. I see that it did well for those who may be incarcerated or in prison. You ain't go to no prison. So why do you need this? And it was something that just wasn't understood, because there was a acknowledgement of the quality of the teaching and the reformative power of the teaching. There was no argument in that. However, with that being true, they didn't see that I needed it. Because I didn't fit the profile of what a Muslim in their mind would be.
Yes, ma'am.
However, when I accepted Islam, there were many people like me, you know, it was the time of the year in the 90s where the mosque was full of college students, full of college students. Many students that were introduced to the teachings in colleges because the minister was traveling, Stop the Killing tours, and all these great tours, and visiting Howard University and all the great institutions. Mr. Farrakhan was visiting all of them, and bringing these students' minds on fire. And when you're coming into college, I mean, when you're in college, you're automatically open to learning. You're automatically open to growing and challenging your thought. That's what the job of a university is, or a good university is, or a good teacher is, in general, is to challenge your thought, is to challenge it. And if through the challenge, if it is able to withstand that challenge, then we know it's truth, right? But if it can't withstand the challenge, then we know there's some falsehoods or inaccuracies embedded in that, you know. So yeah, so I was prime, and there were many among us, especially in New York, that was extremely prime, you know, to hear this teaching and accept it and move out on it, for sure.
All praises to Allah. Yes, ma'am. Wonderful.
Yes,
okay, now I want to stay with your family being Haitian and how important that is. How important was that to your upbringing and preparing you to hear a word, you know, from the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan?
It was everything for me. It was everything for me. I grew up with strong roots, strong identity. There was no question of who I was. Like my mother would say, ou kon et entre ou kon sorti. In English, that is, you know how to go in and you know how to leave. And what that means is you don't need permission to enter into spaces or to exit spaces because you are enough, right? So when I grew up as a young child, that identity, that sense of history, you know, learning about the revolution of 1804, learning about the Louisiana Purchase, learning about Toussaint Louverture and Boukman and Henri Christophe, learning about that great woman when when the French finally took Dessalines, and that great woman that gathered, because the history of that was that they dismembered him and put parts of his body all over the island. And there was this woman that collected parts of his body to bury him. You know, these histories of the savagery, you know, the history of even a soup, like a dish. In January, in the Haitian culture eats soup jumeau, which is a squash soup. And this is a soup that celebrates Haitian independence. And every January 1, every Haitian household, if you're following tradition, will prepare soup jumeau, which is called squash soup. But the backdrop of that squash soup is that that's a soup that the French would make us make for them. So when we became independent, we said, now we're going to be making that soup for ourselves. So I'm talking about, Josh, since 1804.
Yes, ma'am.
Black people were making that soup in rebellion to the treatment from the French at that time. So through storytelling and through history, you know, that sense of identity was always alive with me. That sense of identity, who I am as a Black woman. However, with that also, Christianity embedded in it. So here you have a culture that is strong in a sense of identity. However, Christianity is embedded in a sense of that we're worshiping white Jesuses. You know, we have that there may be some white images versus the images that represent us. Even the idea of Jesus being a Black man. you know, many are aware of it, you know, but there's some that may resist that, you know. So you're fighting against ideas and ideologies, you know, and that was something that I faced as well. But my family are extremely strong. They're amazing, strong women. I have a strong matriarchal family of women, strong women and strong men, and I was blessed with that. You know, I was blessed with that for sure, for sure.
All praises to Allah. Beautiful. And thank you, everyone, who continues to show you love. I wanted to ask you, in New York, once you accept the teachings, you're registered. What was the climate like in the community, but primarily inside of the mosque? What was that like in New York City?
All right. So there's a story I have to tell before that.
Hmm.
Because once I accepted Islam, I transferred over to a mosque in upstate New York called Albany, State University of New York in Albany. The
Hmm.
mosque in Albany at that time, well, it was a study group, and at that time you couldn't register. So I
Hmm.
would wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning and drive to Boston.
Hmm.
For
Okay.
we would drive to Boston for processing class. And at that time, Sister Shirley
Hmm.
was there. And I remember she said, Sister Jennifer, come in my car, let's go for a drive. And I was blown away because she had an amazing car. I remember it was a green Jaguar,
Hmm.
convertible,
Hmm.
Superfly. I'm talking about the 90's, okay? Green Jaguar convertible. And she took me for a drive. And then in her taking me for a drive, she took me on a tour of Boston.
Hmm.
And she said, you know, you see this spot? That's our shopping center. My husband and I, we own that shopping center. And then she kept pointing to places and properties that they own. And then finally, she took me to a vitamin, like a nutrition shop, a shop that she had. And she
Hmm.
said, yeah, there's a store that we own as well.
Hmm.
And she told me then that I will never forget as a Muslim, as a young Muslim that hadn't even registered yet. She said that Allah comes to promise you luxuries, monies, good homes, and friendships in all walks of life, and never believe anything different. So once you accept Islam, claim what is yours.
Yes, ma'am.
She said, claim what is yours. And what an amazing experience as a new Muslim. She didn't have to put me in her car. She did not have to take me driving. I was no different than anyone else,
Hmm.
you know? So the fact that she did always will endear me, just endeared me to her. And so I processed at that point. I registered in upstate New York at that point. And then shortly thereafter, I went home to number 7.
Hmm.
And I went home to number 7 in an incubator. And what do I mean by that? That it was now you're going to get me emotional again. It was the most exquisite
Hmm.
environment in nurturing a young Muslim. The most exquisite. I was surrounded by the most amazing pioneers
Hmm.
that taught me how to be a Muslim. I remember me leaning on the wall. Sister Jennifer, get off that wall. Sister MGT, don't lean. Yes,
Hmm.
ma'am. It was a time that I loved chewing gum. And she said, Sister Jennifer, da, da, da. But in all of this process that I experienced, there was never a moment that I didn't feel love.
Hmm.
I mean, I was surrounded by a love that was nurturing, that was pure. I learned sisterhood
Hmm. Hmm.
in the fullness of what sisterhood is. Wanting for your sister what you want for yourself. Showing love and empathy, care, tenderness. I learned that in number 7. I learned that in number 7. Sister Captain Karima, Brother Captain Dennis, Student Minister Conrad at the time.
Yes, ma'am.
Sister Captain Amina Rasul. All amazing people that embodied the standard of Islam. Were active, were out in the community. We owned Harlem. We owned Harlem. I mean, we owned Harlem, and we would be back and forth in Harlem. I remember going to class and coming up the number 3 train and walking up the steps. And there was never a point that I didn't see an FOI there at the top of the steps welcoming me to my MGT class. Never. Brother Josh, never.
Go ahead, Sister Jennifer. Yes, ma'am.
Never. There was never a moment that I did not feel secure, that I didn't feel protected, that I didn't feel part of something bigger and greater than myself, ever. There was never a time that I didn't feel that way, So to have the great power of Brother Conrad, Minister Conrad teaching, he was a phenomenal orator.
Yes, ma'am.
Phenomenal orator. Still is.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Facts.
A phenomenal orator. But the Captain Dennis was an amazing captain. Sister Captain Karima, an amazing MGT captain. And to have the support and to tutelage and the guidance of Sister Captain Amina Rasul, man, that is the World Series. Man, you're hitting it out the park. What? Being in MGT class when she's teaching great I was about to go there and give you what she was teaching, brother. I can't bring you in an MGT class. I almost went there, brother. I almost went there. So to have her teaching classes that were classic classes in person were amazing. Going up to number 7 fishing tape up the street, around the corner. And being able to socialize and to be with the Muslims and feel a part of an ummah and a community. Absolutely amazing. And even now, as I'm 32 years in accepting Islam, because I accepted Islam at 19 years old, if I were to say what made me who I am, what was the moment that made me who and what I am, I would have to say that. It was my beginning years. In number 7, the sisterhood, which was amazing, the brotherhood that was amazing, and it's brotherhood and sisterhood that I have till this day, till this day. So it's a gift. It's a gift, for sure.
All praise due to Allah. People are showing you love all around the world. Thank you all, everyone, for every like. They even your hearts go off, sister, and all of that good stuff. Assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam, Sister Jamila, ex Winbush, and everyone else who is watching. We have a brief 60-second commercial break for all of the sponsors of the People's Podcast. We are grateful for every like, share, and subscription, as well as every anonymous cash app. Thank you all. Please let us know what city you all are watching from. And if you have any guest suggestions, please put those in the comments. And thank you for showing love to Sister Jennifer Muhammad. Thank you all very much. We get some great history. Boom. Here we go. Are live with the People's Podcast. Street Premiere Media Production. He has a 4K camera and a drone. He does television and film editing. Please reach out if you need any of that. Sister Naima, Stay On Point Dance Academy. She teaches ballet virtually to young girls all across the country. Sister Miriam, ABC I Love Me children's book and coloring book. My father's book, A Soldier in the Movement of Christ. My 2 books, Cleopatra, which is a children's book, and No Father, No Excuse, both of which are available on Amazon. Thank you all. People showing love. Shout out to all the People Podcast affiliates everywhere. Brother Al-Fajr says, Assalamu alaikum family. Walaikum salam, Fajr. We was just talking about you before we went live. Hurry up and go see Deadpool and Wolverine so we can discuss it, because it's always great discussing superhero movies with you. Can't believe you're so grown now. But yes, my next question for you, ma'am, is the Vanguard class in the 90's. Growing up, seeing my moms and all you all colors and uniforms, and all soldiers, drills, all that. That was very, very exciting time for me to see virtuous women, military, God, all that good stuff. Can you explain to us what that was like to be a part of?
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. When I accepted Islam, I automatically went into the MGT class. At that time, you had to decide to enter into the Vanguard class. And I received so much richness in the MGT class. So I said, oh my gosh, what more can there be? Literally, I was asking, what more can there be? Because this is amazing. This is amazing. Until I met your mom. Until I met your mom. Your sister, Captain Sharifa Muhammad, inspired me to be a Vanguard. I wanted to be like her. And I can let me pull out, Brother Josh, exactly what her was, okay? Her was, Sister Captain Sharifa was one that if she's upset, you wouldn't know it. If she's frazzled, you wouldn't know it. She had this sense of inner calm about her that was so amazing to me. May Allah truly be pleased. I was like her little sister, and she was my big sister. Like I remember you were young, Josh, when I was in Chicago, and she was like, okay, so Jennifer, come on, stay with us in Chicago, and I'll stay over there with your family there in Chicago. And she would always mentor me. She would always give me guidance at that, she would help me as a young Muslim, as a Vanguard. Then we had Sister Captain Nusayba. We had Sister Captain Najima out of DC, Sister Captain Nusayba out of Atlanta. I mean, powerhouses that literally took me under their wing and nurtured me and taught me. I learned how the characteristics and the soldier ring of a Vanguard through their example. Traveling all over the country.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Doing security all over the country with the minister. I remember road trips where it's Vanguard, man, we wouldn't have sleep. Sleep, what is that? We were broke, man. We were broke. So there was no airlines. You're getting yourself in the truck. You get yourself in the car. You get yourself in the hoopty and take a prayer with you. Contribute with some gas, and you hit the road. We went to Detroit. We went to Chicago. We were traveling. The minister was traveling all over the country. And we would be there to offer security for the minister. Many of us would be 5, 6, 8 deep in hotel rooms. But why do we need a hotel room anyway? Because we're going to be on post at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So do you really need it, right? So it's like, that was our life. Not in the love of Islam, the love of soldiering. What we ate it, we drank it. The character and the integrity of a Muslim was the standard. The standard, our conduct, that was what we were held to, as MGT Vanguard, So an absolutely amazing experience. Grew up, holding post, knowing about comfortable shoes and holding post for hours. What are you talking about relief? There's no relief. You may have relief. But there's times and there's moments in which you may have had relief, but there's many moments where you may not have relief. Hold your post as a soldier. Hold your post as a soldier. Hold your post as a soldier. And that's what we did, and we held our post for our minister. We held our post for the women and children. We held our post for our elders. We held our post for those who needed us. That was the duty of a Vanguard. And that's the duty that we reflected and we held true. And and we were held accountable for as and Sister Sharifa was a driver in that. She was a driver in that. The one thing I loved is that although we were militant and extremely militant, I mean, extremely militant in a sense of being able to defend ourselves and defend others and such, hey, we could hold our own, no doubt, no doubt, no doubt, no doubt. We can handle business, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
However, her example was that your ability to do that doesn't necessarily mean you have to sacrifice femininity. That you can be feminine, yet still be a soldier. That you can be all that you are as a woman, and that doesn't minimize your militancy or your soldier behavior or conduct. And she was an example of that as well. You know, every movement she had. I had a brand new walk with Sister Captain Sharifa. I learned how to walk, how to move. She had a very slow type of a move, and I learned it. I admired her. And I admired her as a person. I admired her as a woman. I admired her as a mother. I admired her as a wife. I admired her as a friend. You know, I admired her in every single area. There isn't an area that's left empty with her. She was a complete woman.
Okay, we're not getting emotional over here. Thank you.
I'm trying not to get emotional. I almost got emotional a couple of times, bro, Josh.
I'm talking about myself. I'm trying to keep it together. You don't got to be soldier. The military. Yes, ma'am. All of that. Right away, man. Right away. Good stuff.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Shout out to my mom. Shout out to everybody. Okay, all praises to Allah. Okay, I also wanted to ask you, you have a great way with vocabulary and being a speaker. The ministry class, how did that come about, and why was there such a lapse in time from the first time to now? Can you explain it to
me? Believe it or not, Brother Josh, when I accepted Islam, the first assignment I took was actually being in the student ministry class. And I was actually in a student ministry class in upstate New York, and I would travel back and forth to Canada, Montreal, Canada. And the beginning parts of the beginning of establishing Islam in Canada and Ottawa was a lot of those efforts of traveling up and down to Canada to build the mosque there. And I would travel every week. Every week I would travel up to Canada, and I would teach. And I would teach in Canada. And it was an amazing experience. And I was a young Muslim teaching Islam at that time. Somewhere in there, honestly, Brother Josh, I don't know what happened, or I don't know. I guess in my mind, I started questioning myself. You know, I started feeling, okay, Jennifer, I started feeling the weight of the word. Because this isn't a lightweight teaching. That's right. It's a heavy teaching. And when you are teaching it, you have to bear the responsibility of the weight of this great truth. And I didn't feel like I knew enough. I didn't feel like I just doubted myself. I didn't feel like I could represent the teaching as perfectly as it deserved. And just feeding my mind this stuff, you know? And at that point, I shifted. You know, I taught for a good while. I taught for a good while, I taught. And then after that, I moved on to the MGT side and officer and MGT, being with the sisters, you know? So in answer to your question, it is absolutely serendipitous. The fact that after 31 years, I'm back in the student ministry under the leadership of our local minister here in Phoenix, Minister Halim Muhammad, who is
Yes,
absolutely
ma'am.
amazing. And it has an amazing ministry class of powerhouses here in Phoenix as well. So it's interesting, the fact that it's now coming full circle that I'm in this space again. But it's an honor, it's a privilege. And in truth, I guess it took me 32 years in learning as you go through your walk in life that you're never ready. You never are. You're never prepared. You're never qualified. You never have it. You never have this ideal. Because really, the whole definition of ministry is ministering and giving, serving. And in order for me or anyone to be in the ministry, we have to first allow Allah ourselves to be served.
Yes, ma'am.
With Allah and ministered by him. So in my mind, in my thinking, I thought that ministering mean I have to be the one. And stupidity and arrogance. Literally. But recognizing, nah, it's Allah. It's that you're allowing yourself to be a vessel for Allah to speak through you.
Yes,
in all of your imperfections. And not being afraid to stand, to acknowledge them.
Yes, ma'am.
Because we can come up, especially those of us who've been around for a while. Some of us are great at giving false narratives.
Yes, ma'am.
You know?
Yes, ma'am.
As it relates to our journey. And sometimes people need to hear how we were able to make it over. How we were able to win. How we were able to overcome the struggle, overcome the pain, overcome the disappointment, overcome the wouldas, the shouldas. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
And people are looking for a roadmap. You know? And when I think about ministering and ministry and all those things, it's that, you know? And so even in the ministry class, and Brother Minister Halim will speak to it, and everybody in the ministry class, when we have our ministry classes, I will be quick to talk about Jennifer and talk about my journey and my areas where I'm striving my best to develop in all those areas. You know, I will always speak to that. I will always speak to that.
All praises to Allah. Beautiful. Shout out to everyone who continues to send love to you. Sister Naima says all praises to Allah. Brother Leon says original salute and great content, family. Thank you, Brother Leon. Thank you, Brother Lee. Thank you, Sister Naima. Thank you, everyone who's watching. First of all, shout out to Student Minister Halim, who everybody go back and watch his interviews. He hosted me, you know, doing a white carpet event. And all. He's a very kind, knowledgeable person. Also Syracuse, all of the East Coast stuff that y'all got going on. Now y'all in Phoenix. Very nice brother, and always shows me love. So shout out to him as well. I wanted to ask you about being a mother. What advice would you give to future mothers, and what is the difference between rearing sons and now you have a daughter? What's the difference in that for people who are watching? But please let us know.
My greatest joy, my greatest accomplishment, anything that I would put greatest before would be my children. Allah has blessed me with absolutely amazing children. And it is absolutely amazing It's absolutely amazing. I feel privileged, the fact that that Allah has used me as a vessel, you know, to bring them forth. I have 3 adult children. Well, not children anymore. I guess I can't call them children anymore. I don't know if they're listening. But I have grown folk. I have grown folk. Nas is 28. Remember when Nas was a baby, Josh? I mean, y'all were all together, you know? So Nas is 28 and will be 28. Now, so correct me. I think it's about to be 28. And then I have Kadir, who's 24, and Faj, who's 21, coming on 21. And I have Amara, that's 10. And they're all grown. I mean, outside of Amara, that is. And coming up, raising them, it was a journey that I had to always cultivate and refine. And what I mean by that is, when I accepted Islam, I accepted it. I made a decision to accept Islam. Whereas my sons, all they know is Islam. They don't know anything outside of Islam. So with that being the case, there were many iterations of me as a parent. And what I mean by that is, I had to learn to give them space, to find themselves, to grow into themselves, to make choices, to define their identity as a Muslim. And that's a definition that they had to come to on their own. But I, as their mother, I'm responsible to support them, to love them, to nurture them in that journey, but not to judge it. You see what I'm saying? I can nurture them, but I can't judge it. I have to, the only thing my boys know, okay, here's the foundation of our faith. You know, there's certain foundations that are foundation of our belief system. But within that foundation of this belief system, there's a wide open field for the wide awake man and woman to work out in.
That's right. That's right.
And where they want to work, how they want to work, that is a journey that they'll find. And they found, I have sons, entrepreneurs, college student. I mean, and they're doing exceptionally well for themselves. I've never known a sleepless night with them. Never. I've never known a moment where I've had to drive the streets looking for them. Ever. I've never known a moment that they've ever disrespected me.
Go ahead, son. Shout out to the sons. Go ahead.
Shout out to Nazca Diafaja. There's never been a moment.
Praise be to Allah.
There's never even been a moment that they've raised their voice to me. Ever. And I mean, I'm thankful. And the same with my daughter. All of these things is the same with Amara. You know, I'm thankful and I'm grateful. I'm learning. And when I talk about these iterations, there's many iterations. And I'm learning how to see everyone as an individual and give them what they need individually. And not thinking that there's some cookie cutter mode or way to live life, you know? There was this song I would always sing to my children, my sons, and Nas recently, man, that boy had me crying, Josh, had me crying. He sent me a text, completely random, and he sent me a song, I Hope You Dance by Leanne Womack.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Phenomenal song.
Phenomenal song. And I would sing my sons, I would sing that to them as young children. I would always sing it to them. And Nasa told me, he said, I started crying. I said, Nas, I'm crying. I'm crying. And he says, every time I hear that song, I think of you. And that warmed my heart, Josh. Because if there is a song that embodies my mission statement as a mother, it's that song.
Okay.
It says, I hope you never lose your sense of wonder.
Yes, right.
You get your fill to eat, but always keep that hunger. May you never take one single breath for granted. God forbid love ever leaves you empty-handed. I hope you still feel small when you stand beside the ocean. Whenever one door closes, I hope one more opens. Promise me that you give faith a fighting chance. And when you get the choice to sit it out or dance, I hope you dance. I hope you dance. There's one more part. I hope you never fear those mountains in the distance. Never settle for the path of least resistance. Living might mean taking chances, but they're worth taking. Loving might be a mistake, but it's worth making. Don't let some helping heart leave you bitter. When you come close to sailing out, reconsider. Give the heavens above more than just a passing glance. And when you get the choice to sit it out or dance, I hope you dance. I hope you dance. I mean, that is the song, Josh.
Go off, go off.
That is the song. And that is the song that I would sing to them. And that's how I wanted them to live their life. Beautiful. Live your life with courage.
Beautiful.
Live your life with fearlessness. Don't live your life being afraid to make mistakes, because you're going to make mistakes. Don't live your life being afraid to fall, because you're going to fall. But if you live your life fearless and courageous,
yes, ma'am,
looking at mountains as mountains, but as Jesus saw them, I see them as trees.
That's right. That's right.
That spittle in his eye, and he said, I see them as they are. I want you to see them as they are. And I want you to claim what is yours.
Yes, ma'am.
Not with perfection or this ideology that I'm expecting you to be perfect, because I'm not perfect. You know, and I will tell my sons and I'll tell my children where I have fallen short and where I wish, I could have done something different, but I'm not going to regret it, because I strive my best to live my life with the same courage that I tell them to live their life with. And I said, and if that moment comes, man, that was a hit. That's all right. But even with that hit, I came up. And everybody comes up with a hit, as long as you understand the nature of the hit and understand what made it become a hit.
Yes, ma'am.
And then you learn, you grow, you develop, and you win. You know, and so I just feel, I just raised my sons not to be cowards. I raised my children not to be cowards. Live life with the same courage that you talk.
Yes, ma'am.
You can't say that, hey, man, if someone comes up to me, I'll do whatever, but then you live in, but you're afraid to take chances.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
That you're afraid to make moves. You're afraid to love. You're afraid to do those things. Nah, live your life with courage.
Yes, ma'am.
Live your life with courage. And that's why I nurtured them in that, because I was nurtured in it. And that's how I live my life. If you're looking for perfection, you ain't going to find that in Jennifer Muhammad. But what you will find is someone who loves Islam. What you will find is someone that is living every single breath and moment of her life striving to be pleasing to Allah. You'll find that. You will find someone that loves our messenger and loves our minister and loves our savior, you know, and love the Muslims, you know, but You won't find perfection. And I don't even, and I think in us recognizing that within ourselves allows us to be more merciful towards each other.
Mm.
And stop holding each other to this crazy standard that for some, well, that's crazy standard. The standard of Islam is the standard. But sometimes we have in our minds these ideals that someone will never make a mistake.
Mm.
And everyone has to have the right to make a mistake and to learn from that and to grow from it and know that they won't be turned away or their back turned away or turned aside because they may not be as perfect in that moment.
Mm. Mm.
You know, we're all striving on that uphill road and striving to embody the standard that Allah has introduced to us. So, you know, I can say that raising sons is very different than raising daughters.
Mm. Mm.
I'm learning that with my daughter, Mara, and it's an amazing journey. So I noticed that as I raised my sons, there's certain elements of raising them I was able to apply, but there's some things I couldn't apply with Amara.
Mm.
So going back to your question, as it relates to being a mother, is being agile and being flexible and not caught up in one way, but recognizing that in our journey as parents, we're going to find 1,001 ways because we're trying to open that lock in the supreme wisdom, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Mind walking to and fro, right?
That's right. That's right.
And we're trying to get that key, that right key to unlock it.
Yes, ma'am.
But we may have to try a couple keys.
Mm.
It can't just be one. And it has to be a key of mercy. It has to be a key of forgiveness. It has to be a key of compassion, a key of understanding, you know, and all those things, you know. Our best wealth as parents is our children. The greatest wealth we could ever have. The greatest wealth we could ever have. I don't give a darn how much money you got. The greatest wealth you can ever have is in the investment you make in your children.
Mm.
You know, and I'm reaping the benefits of that wealth.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yes,
Thankful to Allah for it because I'm enjoying every minute of it. I'm enjoying every minute of it. You know, my children love me and I love them. And it's a gift to be able to reap those benefits, you know.
Excellent. You're teaching the Jennifer and people showing love all around the world. And on
Praise
that
God.
positive note, I gotta put you one more question on the hot seat. Jennifer, can we make this part one? Because we gotta bring you back. You gotta come back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. I would love to. I would love to. Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. And inshallah, I told you I got family that's in Phoenix, so we gotta get an in-person interview. So I gotta bring my camera and stuff out there so that we can part two in person, inshallah. And man, this is great. I know everybody who's watching is inspired, and may Allah continue to bless you. Please keep me posted of when you are going to get on the rostrum and speak. I know everybody's gonna be like, you know, packing, going crazy out there.
Yes, sir.
And oh no, last thing, you like to travel. Can you explain to us why travel is so valuable to you?
Travel is everything. I mean, we're taught student enrollment and actual facts, and we're taught these numbers and land and all these things, but we have to, I want to meet, I want to see what Allah has for me, you know? And that means I need to travel. I want to see that. I want to see the beautiful landscape and the majesty of Allah. Right. Recently, we went to myself. I took a sister, myself and another sister. We traveled to Antelope Canyon in northern Arizona, and it's actually on the border of Arizona and Utah. And it was absolutely breathtaking. We saw Horseshoe Bend. We saw such amazing creations of Allah and things that you never would have seen if you didn't travel to go find them. Like, Allah's not going to bring you his artwork. You're going to have to go find it, you know? You can go to wonderful places like Sedona and wonderful, I mean, there's so many beautiful, beautiful, beautiful testimonies of Allah's greatness. Let's see it. Let's travel the world. Let's go and see. And even here within the United States, I know we cannot travel through the guidance of our minister right now. However, still, there's a lot of land to cover in the United States.
That's right. That's right.
There's a lot of land to cover. So really, we can just plan some time to be intentional about just visiting different places and meeting different people and experiencing different experiences and cultures. And it's amazing. I love, love, love travel. My children have always traveled. Something that has been a part of our family, as far as traveling and seeing the country and road trips. We love road trips. And that's something that we do a lot of as a family. And that's something that is just a part of us. And I encourage everyone to do it for sure.
All praise to Allah. Yes, ma'am. Well,
Yes.
on behalf of myself, my family, and the viewing audience of the People's Podcast, we want to thank Allah for you and your family and the many sacrifices that you all have done to establish Islam, not only here in America, but in Canada. All of your sacrifices, we salute you and honor you and pay respect to you and your family. This is Joshua Leonard Muhammad signing off with People's Podcast. Assalamu alaikum, ma'am.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you so much, Brother Josh.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for watching. Can't wait to put this on YouTube.